Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen Wassalatu wassalam ala Rasulillah. Alhamdulillah. This is now episode 58 of the podcast, The Forward, with myself, Brother Matthew Locke, author of The Big Step. And today's topic is epistemology and the nature of reality. And again, this is based on a blog post I did almost 10 years ago, going back in time. But I thought this would also be a useful lead in to the other podcast I have planned, which is a book review of The True Believer, the book by Eric Hoffer. But before I get into it, there's a few updates to make. Alhamdulillah, inshallah, there are currently two books in the pipeline. One is إذا وقعت الواقعة. Both books are by Imam Muhammad Ta'wil of Morocco, rahimahullah, who passed away a few years ago. A great scholar of fiqh and usul, of the marja of the Moroccans, basically, and the Malikis, taught in the Qarawiyyin University in Fez. His first book, Al-Waqat al-Waqi'a, is about riba, bank interest and mortgages and these things. So it's a solid refutation of this practice and how Muslims attempt to justify it, both in the Anglosphere and in Dar al-Islam. It's a short book, but it just needs one more read-through. Again, I have to get my hands on the proof copy, do a read-through, make any necessary changes, and then that'll be published, inshallah. And then the second book, I've just finished translating it yesterday, and it's now been sent to the proofreaders. Is La Dhuquriyya fil Fiqh by the same Imam, which translates literally as no masculinism. Masculinism. Is that a word? Yeah, it is a word in English. There's no masculinism in fiqh, meaning fiqh is not biased against females in favor of males, or biased against women in favor of men, which again is a very, very solid book in terms of its fiqh, its arguments, its evidences, and so forth. Slightly longer than the first book. It's about 26,000 words, and inshallah, there's also some footnotes, and I will try to bolster it with some additional notes and appendices, so there's further information for people to read, because it's a sensitive topic, at the same time a very, very important topic. So that's coming, and inshallah, those two books, inshallah, please remember me and the proofreaders and everyone else involved in your du'as. Inshallah, these books can be published in Ramadan. That's the idea. So, to proceed with the topic at hand, epistemology, the nature of reality, this is a blog post I wrote in 2009, June 12th, 2009. So I will just read it out and comment on it. And I think there are some pertinent points that we should bear in mind as we're talking about the Anglosphere. So not just nature of reality, but the nature of Islam in the Anglosphere. This is how it's related. So I started off and I said Assalamu alaikum, and then I said, I am writing this post because of a conversation I repeatedly have with a certain brother about al-kalaam and the logical arguments that are currently circulating in Western academic institutions. Today's discussion, albeit rather brief and informal, was about epistemology and the nature of reality, and of course it touched on how to answer certain individuals when they answer certain questions. This is a matter that I feel I need to get off my chest, and inshallah some benefit will be found in what I have to say. I think numbered points would be the best way of going about this. So, when I was studying and teaching in Morocco, and I used to spend my mornings at a cafe, just because I had like a little quiet corner where I could do my reading and my translating, whatever it was. And there was a brother who was a colleague. He used to come by, and he was very, very, I don't know how he is now, but he was very, very fast in this idea that he believed that by studying al-kalaam, going into all that dialectical theology and all these logical arguments and so forth, that he would be able to find the answers that Western academics, or academics in the Anglosphere, well, both means Europe, whether in America, Britain, that he would be able to answer all these issues that they raise, all these, supposedly highly sophisticated questions that they ask about Islam and the reasons they give for not believing in Islam. And he had raised this issue several times before, and that's why I thought, I just need to write this stuff down, get it off my chest, I didn't necessarily give it to the brother to read because I'm not necessarily attacking him personally, but I just felt impelled at that time to just get it off my chest and say and put these points forward. So the first point I made was not everyone on the face of this earth is sincerely seeking the truth with a capital T, with the intention of submitting to it and unconditionally once it has been found. How do we know this is true? Allah is most just, and He rewards sincerity. If everyone on the face of the earth were sincerely seeking the truth and ready to submit to it, then everyone on the face of the earth would be Muslim. They're not. So, and this is something I noticed even when I was at university, the Islamic societies, and this is mentioned in my book, The Big Step, about I do that chapter on the guys who keep these Shahada scorecards. The people who brag about, oh, I've got 3,000 people said Shahada in my hand, and I've got 5,000 Shahada certificates and all that stuff. It's meaningless fluff, because where are those people now? What are they doing now? How is their Islam now? But what I did notice in their preaching style, when I had, the unfortunate opportunity of being around them, what I noticed is that sometimes they would debate an unbeliever. They would debate an unbeliever. The person could be Christian or atheist or whatever. And they would present good arguments. This is what happened. They would actually win the argument. They would present good proofs and good evidences and show, why the Quran is the word of God, right? Quote unquote. Why it is indeed revelation. The Messenger of Allah ﷺ is indeed the Messenger of Allah. And then the unbeliever would just shrug his shoulders or whatever and walk away, and they would get really, really frustrated. Like, I don't get it. I've presented the arguments, presented the proofs, and they don't want to become Muslims. It's like, yeah, because there's something else at play here. Because the mistake they're making is you're assuming, as a quote unquote preacher, you're assuming that everyone on the face of the earth is actively and sincerely seeking the truth. And that once you present it to them, they'll just automatically accept it. And that's not the case. So, point 2 is this. Allah called His deen Islam. What does Islam mean? Islam means submission, surrender, giving up, making peace, etc. This is in Surah Al-Imran, ayah 19, Surah Al-Imran, ayah 85, Surah Al-Ma'idah, ayah 3. Islam is the official name. That's the official name of the religion, Islam. Not the religion of truth. It's not called that. It's not called the religion of truth. It's certainly not called the religion of peace. This is a made-up term which was invented by leftists. I think it was. Yeah, I don't. No, that's Islamophobia. I'm thinking about something else. But yeah, it's an invented term from the Anglosphere, basically. Muslim scholars have never used this term, religion of peace, but that's a separate topic. That's a separate blog post as well. So Islam is called Islam. That's the official name, not the religion of truth or the true religion or anything similar to that, even though such labels are correct. Yes, Islam is the religion of truth. It is the true religion, but that's not the official name. The official name is Islam. Why? Because the truth of this deen is obvious. It's actually obvious. The true issue, or the actual issue, is whether or not the individual is capable of subduing his nafs, or his ego, and his desires, and submitting to the truth. That's the core of the issue. It's not is Islam true? No. It's true. Can you submit to it? Can you check your ego, put your nafs down, subdue it, and therefore submit? Okay, point 3. While al-kalaam seeks to answer people's questions about Islam and various theological subjects, there comes a point when no quality or amount of answers will do. A certain individual simply will not believe. Does this mean that Islam and the brilliant theologians that it has produced have failed to provide adequate answers? No. Someone disbelieves out of choice, as is made clear in Surah Al-Kahf, ayah 29, the 18th chapter, verse 29, as well as Surah Al-Baqarah, the 2nd chapter, verses 6 and 7, is also extremely relevant here. And that's the verses about where Allah says, whether you warn them or don't warn them, they will disbelieve. It doesn't matter. You can preach to them, you can exhort them, you can warn them. It doesn't matter. They're still going to disbelieve. And then Surah Al-Kahf 20 and Surah Al-Kahf 29, that's where Allah says whoever wants to will believe, and whoever doesn't want to will not believe or will disbelieve. So, ilm al-kalam, and this is the interesting thing about ilm al-kalam. It was Imam Muhammad Sayyid al-Bulti, rahimahullah. I think this was in his classes on the history of Islamic legislation, which I went through a few years ago. He makes this point that the way you have to see ilm al-kalam, and it relates to, I believe this is a story of Imam Fakhruddin al-Razi, I'm not 100% sure. This is a story told to me by one of my fiqh teachers, that he was walking in Baghdad with his students, and his students were in front of him, and they were sort of making way for him, telling people to get out of the way. And one of them said, one of the students said, make way for this great scholar, this great theologian, because he has come up with 1,000 proofs for Allah's existence. And there was an old lady in the vicinity, mind your own business going past, but then she snapped back and said, 1,000 proofs for 1,000 doubts. Right? 1,000 proofs for 1,000 doubts. In other words, why would you go into it? Why would you dig up all these proofs unless you had doubt? If you don't have doubt, why do you look for proofs? Right? If you're absolutely certain of something, if you're absolutely certain that the sun is above you in the sky, do you look for proofs? If you're absolutely certain that your kitchen is down the hallway, do you keep going over there to make sure it's still there? I mean, what's the point? So, to further add to this, Imam al-Bulti, in his classes on the history of Islamic legislation, he said the way to understand ilm al-kalaam, which is this dialectical theology, which goes into all these logical proofs for Allah's existence, you're sort of stepping out, you're going beyond the Quran and the Sunnah and into all these dialectical matters. What he said was, ilm al-kalaam is like medicine. That's how you have to see it. It's medicine. When do you take medicine? You take medicine when you're sick. Right? You have an illness, the doctor checks you, gives you a diagnosis, prescribes medicine. If you're not actually sick, you're not actually carrying any sort of disease or don't have any sort of infection, and you take medicine, it can actually harm you, because that's not what the medicine's for. It's for a sick person with a particular disease. It's not for a healthy person, or even someone who's misdiagnosed. It's not how it works. So, if someone is heavily infected by secular thought or atheistic thought or Greek philosophy or whatever it is, and therefore they've reached a point where they are seriously doubting Allah's existence, or they've reached a point where maybe they are just a full-blown atheist, then you might want to bring in ilm al-kalam, because that person is in serious trouble. Then you want to bring in the arguments. If someone has got to the point where they're not interested in the Quran, they're not interested in the Sunnah, they don't even accept their validity, then you can employ ilm al-kalam and logic and so forth. But if someone is a firm believer in Allah and His Messenger, is a firm believer that the Quran is revelation, the Sunnah is revelation, and so forth, what benefit is ilm al-kalam? Where does it fit in? This is a very, very important point to bear in mind. These sciences have their places. Ilm al-kalam has its place. It should not be abused on the one hand, and it should not be neglected. That's the idea. Point number 4. By examining the Quran and the Sirah and the various arguments and objections that the Quraysh and the disbelievers in general put forward, one will find no mention of them not understanding the message being presented, or of them being unconvinced. They ask for more signs, but in reality, as Allah informs us, they are liars and they will never believe. And you can see Surah, the 17th chapter, verses 88 through to 97. If the Quran itself isn't a clear sign and proof, especially amongst a people who are the most skilled and proficient in the Arabic language, then what is? The disbelievers, and the Quraysh notables in particular, disbelieved for their own selfish reasons. They feared that they would lose their temporal position of power and authority, They feared that the tribe would lose its status amongst the Arabs and thus much wealth. Right? That was the real underlying cause. I mean, I remember Imam Sha'arabi, because I was reading the tafsir at the time. He was constantly making this point that it's not about them being unconvinced or they don't understand the message. They've got some very serious worldly concerns and some very serious worldly interests. They're like, we don't want to lose our status as the tribe, as this main tribe on the Arabian Peninsula. We have idols. People come and make pilgrimage to these idols, and therefore, and they bring their goods with them. They bring their money with them. They trade with us. This is essentially our livelihood, and this new religion that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has brought could ruin all of that. That's how they were looking at it. And then you also have to think about, do they really want to curb their desires? Because again, people have human desires. They enjoy drinking, they enjoy fornicating, they enjoy eating bacon, whatever it is, and they're not prepared to curb those desires. That's just part of human nature. So that's point 4. Point 5. Well, just one more thing about point 4. Again, and I believe this is a point that Imam al-Bolti makes in his book, The Greatest Universal Sureties, where they were the most eloquent of the Arabs, and they were challenged, along with any other Arab on the peninsula, because there were poets of other tribes. The fact that the most educated of the Arabs, the great poets of the Arabs, that they were challenged to bring something like the Quran. They were challenged. Allah challenged. This is in Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah 23. On the left-hand side, the bottom of the page, right? Fa'tu bi suratin min mithlihi, right? Bring a surah like it. They couldn't do it. The fact that they couldn't do it is a testimony against all other Arabs. If the best of the Arabs, the most literate of the Arabs, the great poets of the Arabs, if they couldn't bring anything like the Quran, then that is a testimony against all other Arabs. And the fact that none of the Arabs could bring anything like the Quran is a testimony against the rest of humanity. The Quran is not human speech. It's not from a human being. That's what this proves. That's what this establishes. Okay. Point 5. As for disbelieving academics and scholars in the West today, who always have new arguments and objections to Islam, are we as Muslims supposed to find theological and philosophical answers to all of them? What more proof do we need? See Surah Ibrahim, the 14th chapter, ayah 10. Afilahi shek. Right? Is there doubt in Allah? The bulk of these arguments and objections, regardless of how sophisticated they may be, are really nothing more than a smokescreen, cunningly employed to cover the fact that they don't believe because, as a matter of fact, they do not want to. That's it. This case is very similar to many Muslims that I have met over the years who have been given several opportunities to learn Arabic. And this is something I did experience in Nottingham. I discussed this in the virtual book launch about the big step. So similar to many Muslims that I've met over the years who have been given several opportunities to learn Arabic, yet never have. Some have spent months or even years in an Arabic-speaking country. They come up with excuse after excuse as to why they haven't learned the language. Could be the teacher was rubbish, the textbook was boring, the environment didn't allow them to focus, the course was too expensive, and so on and so on. Every time a complaint is responded to and rectified, another one pops up. What does this indicate? It indicates that this individual doesn't want to learn Arabic. He or she is simply not bothered. However, as a Muslim, this would be a shameful thing to admit, and the same thing goes for these academics. They look better if they hide behind the smokescreen of appearing to be too intellectually sophisticated to accept Islam. And that's just, again, this is human nature. This is how some people are. Deep down inside, they do not want to do something. They do not want to embrace Islam, or they do not want to study a certain subject. And they don't want to admit that. They just prefer to come up with excuses for not doing something. It's too hard, it's too difficult, or I have doubts about this, and so on and so forth. And I'm sure you know someone in your life who does this or has done this. You've seen that habit where they always complain, and then every time you fix the problem. Whatever it is they're complaining about, you rectify it, you fix it. As soon as you do that, they find something else. And then you fix that, and then they find something else. And it's just an endless cycle, right? It's the story that never ends. Okay, number 6. Alhamdulillah, 6 is 6 out of 7. One of the silly arguments that they like to put forward is the nature of reality. How do we know that this world is real? How is it more real than a dream? My question is, how does such a discussion, the fact is it doesn't. Playing semantic games with the word real is a waste of time and another smokescreen, another excuse to turn away from Allah and fall down in pathetic subservient obedience to one's nafs. As Muslims, we believe in Allah. Allah is real. Al-Haq, that's one of his names. The Day of Judgment is real, right? Because remember, the Day of Judgment is also called Al-Haqqa, right? It means the real event, right? Because I recently did a project on this, an ilm dalala, and when Allah calls the Day of Judgment or the Day of Standing Al-Haqqa, what he means is that it's true, because Al-Haq means true. It's a true event. It's inescapable. It's going to happen. It's inevitable. But also, because the word haq refers to a right, the plural of which is huquq. So it's the day when all rights will be dispensed and fulfilled, right? Everything will be put back into balance. Everyone who was oppressed or wronged, and at the same time, everyone who did righteousness and good deeds, all accounts will be settled on that day. All rights will be fulfilled. Everyone will get what they deserve. But obviously, remember, as believers, we don't earn the paradise. That's all from Allah's mercy. So, back to the article. The Day of Judgment is real. The world is real as opposed to dreams because what we do in this world will be taken into account on the Day of Judgment. We will be asked about what we did in this world. We are not accountable for what we do in dreams. So in this sense, this most crucial sense, dreams are not real because you're not brought to account for what happens in a dream. You're not going to get asked about what you were doing in a dream. But you will be asked about what you did actually in the dunya. Point 7, and final point. We believe in Allah and the last day. This is our focal point. This has to be at the forefront of our thoughts at all times. These disbelieving academics don't believe in Allah and the last day. They don't even believe in revelation. So they are left groping around in the dark and wasting their time on pointless discussions and arguments that are of absolutely no benefit. Should we really waste our time and try to respond to each and every one of their arguments? They want us to think that their problems are intellectual, that they're in the mind. But as Allah tells us, in Surah Al-Baqarah ayah 10, their problems actually lie in the heart. That's what Allah says. فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ. In their hearts is a sickness. In their hearts is a disease and illness. That's what's wrong. There's no mention of their... Allah doesn't say فِي عُقُولِهِمْ مَرَضٌ. There's a disease in their intellects. No. It's in their hearts. In their hearts is a sickness, and no intellectual, rational, logical argument, no matter how brilliant, can cure a diseased heart, let alone bring a dead heart to life. And this just reminds me of, again, Imam al-Bulti makes this point in The Greatest Universal Sureties. His book, al-Kiniyat SubhanAllah, I actually just forgot the name in Arabic. Al-Kiniyat al-Kubra. He says that if you compare, for example, Imam al-Bukhari or Imam al-Muslim to some Western academic, you have to understand that there are two completely different incentives at play. It's this. Imam al-Bukhari and Imam Muslim believe in Allah on the last day. And they believe that they are going to be brought before Allah and questioned about what they do in this life. That's their thought process. That's what they're thinking about. And therefore, their motivation and their desire is the truth. They want to get to the truth of the matter. And that's why they expended so much effort and time traveling and checking and making sure that the ahadith that they were gathering were authentic. The narrators were trustworthy and reliable and had good memories and did not forget and did not misplace things or misstate anything. They were very, very meticulous in what they did because their motivation was along the last day. Where a lot of these Western academics, what is their motivation? Like, what is their incentive? What are they hoping to get out of their careers? What are they hoping to get out of their writings and their books and their lectures? What are they hoping for? Money? Fame? Maybe they're hoping that when they die, a library will be named after them, or a statue will be put up in their a statue will be put up of them somewhere. Maybe a park bench will be named after them. Something like this. The incentives are totally different, and that's why with these Western academics, that's why they're going to cut corners. That's why they're going to fudge the data, so to speak, because what they're after is a worldly concern. Something to bear in mind. So, in conclusion, may Allah guide us all to seek and acquire knowledge that is of benefit to us, and may He protect us from delving into matters that are of no benefit, and all success lies with Him alone. Ameen. So, alhamdulillah, that concludes this episode. Yeah, I think my memory's going a bit here because when I record these episodes, I'll let you in on something. When I record these episodes, I actually turn the air conditioner off. I'm in a very, very hot country. I turn the air conditioner off because it creates too much noise. And that means that I do feel quite hot. I'm actually feeling quite hot right now. So that's what causes me to slur my speech sometimes, and I sometimes forget what I'm trying to say. So please excuse me for that. But alhamdulillah, we've reached just under half an hour. That suffices. As a final word, I'll say, yes, I mentioned the books that are coming. So inshallah, I hope listeners take an interest, acquire some copies, support this channel. The Big Step is still available, of course. It's there on Lulu. It's there on Amazon. Please spread the word. And please, if you find these podcasts and other videos that I do to be of benefit, please share. Please subscribe. I'm also hoping, there's one last thing I'll mention, I'm also hoping eventually that I will start doing a clips playlist on the podcast. So if there are any sections of podcasts that you've listened to, 3, 4, 5 minute little snippets that you've found beneficial, feel free to leave a comment below, and inshallah I can take that and make it a separate video if you think that would be beneficial. And with Allah alone is every success. So we finish, we say alhamdulillah and salatu wassalam ala rasulillah, and I will see you on the next podcast. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.